All right, here on Gun Owners Radio, we make activism easy. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for listening to Gun Owners Radio and have checked out our website and social media. Go sign up for our email alerts by going to gunownersradio.com.
And thank you, Discount Gun Mart, for letting us set up shop here and broadcast from their boardroom, their very important private boardroom in the back. Thank you so much for being supportive. If you need anything, go to Discount Gun Mart, either on Marana here in San Diego, or go out to Santee over by Gillespie Field off the 67, or just go check them out at discountgunmart.com for more info. And to train with Alicia. Alicia also does her training out of Discount Gun Mart.
I do.
So if you want to train with Alicia, boom, Discount Gun Mart.
All right, now to our gun truth of the week, and here is where we give you the facts that you won't hear from the other media outlets.
Oh. That totally works. I love it. Okay, your gun truth of the week is, in 1989, for 1 week in May, Time magazine researched every firearm homicide in the United States. There were a total of 231 homicides. Now remember, a homicide can be a murder, which is illegal, or it can be a defensive shooting. It just simply means the taking of a life. It could very well have been a defensive gun use. A homicide is a very broad term. Of the 231 homicides in the first week of May, 198. No, excuse me. In the first week of May. Okay, let's see. Of the 231 homicides in the first week of May, 28 were justifiable homicide and 16 were suicide. Time published this in their May issue in 1990 in their article Death by Gun 1 year later. So that's Time magazine. Not exactly what you'd think of as a pro-Second Amendment publication, but they actually did the research and found out exactly what's behind a homicide. There's a lot of misleading information about that. But that is your gun truth of the week. So you have Q's, we have A's. All week people email and they want to know. And so we give you answers. So if you just email me at San Diego County Gun Owners, or you email us at Gun Owners Radio, any kind of question. Maybe it's on how to get your CCW, or what's going on with this policy or that law or this person or whatever. We'll answer it. We'll answer it right here on the air and make sure that everybody gets the answer, because they're probably thinking it too. Okay, so the first one was from, let's see. This is from James here in San Diego. He said, what do you think about the new head of the NRA, Doug Hamlin? James, it's an extremely timely question, because on it was Thursday of this week, I was invited to go meet Doug Hamlin in person at a town hall in Orange County. So myself and a crew of hardworking activists, we actually rented a big old passenger van and took a road trip and went up to Orange County and met with Doug Hamlin and some of his folks. It was great. It was really, really well done. I spoke to him on the phone a couple weeks prior. We talked about some of my concerns with NRA, some of my experiences with NRA, both as a member and as somebody who runs San Diego County Gun Owners. And we talked a lot about the future, what he's looking to do. We found out that we had some friends in common. I spoke with those common friends and said, hey, I just talked to Doug Hamlin. What do you think? I got glowing reviews. So I'm giving him a shot. We went up and listened to his talk. They're very interested in putting all the trouble that the NRA's had behind them. I'm very interested in NRA being an effective organization once again. And this is a whole new crew. Now, one thing I really do like about Doug is, of course, talking to him was great, and the things he said were great. It sounds like they want to move forward, and I'm absolutely going to judge them on their results and their actions. But I really like what they have to say so far. One of the things I really liked was that he was brought up and put into place by a group of people who have reform in mind when it comes to NRA. So they're board members and other people that are very involved in NRA, who are very interested in improving the organization, who are very concerned and very upset at the way things went down over the last 10 years when it comes to NRA because we need to have a national organization. And that being said, I got to tell you, a lot of good things have happened in the last 10 years without NRA. You know, organizations like FPC stepped up and filled a huge leadership role. Second Amendment Foundation, you know, there's a lot of organizations that stepped up and said, hey, you know what? We're not stopping. We're going to do a lot of good things. San Diego County gun owners. So that being said, I think that there's plenty of room for Second Amendment activism. So I'm not going to be critical of them unless they earn that criticism. I am going to be supportive of them trying to make the NRA a good organization again, an effective organization again. I wish them the best of luck. And Doug, thank you. And Dave, who works for the NRA, thank you for inviting us. And we're looking forward to seeing where our circles overlap and what we can do together. I'm really not one of these people who I don't criticize other Second Amendment organizations unless they really, really have earned it. NRA, I definitely came out and said, hey, I'm not happy with a couple of things, but finally it looks like they've turned a corner and they're doing some good things. So good. That's awesome. Next question. This is kind of interesting. Can you carry, if you have a CCW, can you carry at a restaurant that serves alcohol? Now that's interesting. And Alicia, I see you shaking your head, but there's a thing here.
Okay.
There's a
I'm
thing.
ready.
You ready for this?
I'm
Ready
very
for
ready.
the thing? So here's exactly what it says in SB2. Quote, a building, so you can't carry at, quote, a building, real property, and parking area under the control of a vendor or an establishment where intoxicating liquor is sold for consumption on the premises. So that sounds like, hey, if they're selling any kind of alcohol, you can't carry, right?
I also heard that building. So if they have an outdoor seating area,
Right. But
Okay.
there's a key word in here.
liquor.
Yeah.
So if it's just beer,
Beer and wine is not liquor.
I like it.
Beer and wine is not liquor, folks. And if you look it up, beer is an undistilled alcoholic beverage, while liquor is distilled. Beer is made through fermentation, while liquor is made by distilling grains, fruits, and vegetables. Liquor typically has a higher alcohol concentration than beer. When bottled, liquor usually has an alcohol concentration of at least 30%, while beer typically has a maximum alcohol content of around 15%. But really, even that alcohol content, that's not what makes it liquor or not liquor.
Right.
What makes it liquor is that distilling process. Beer's not distilled. Beer's fermented. So it's not liquor. Same with wine. What do you think?
I just can't help but think that they can't be. I mean,
Well, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice.
No.
By all
But-
means, you want to follow the advice of a properly licensed attorney, but we're going to get the feedback of a properly licensed attorney on this.
Absolutely. I'm just trying to think through the why. Like, why would they have worded it that way? They had to have known better because we know their intent.
Either they messed up, which I absolutely I don't think the incompetence of government is not surprising to me.
Right.
Or they were truly just trying to stop people from carrying in a bar and not necessarily at a restaurant that just happens to have a beer and wine license or, a grocery store. I don't know. You know what I mean? Something like that.
I don't see that being the reality, though.
I don't know either. But
I'm okay with it, though. But
everyone rest assured, I'm getting attorneys to weigh in on this this week. Yeah. But pretty interesting. Kind of an interesting thought, though, right?
Yeah.
Of course, the real solution is to get this removed, and we're working on that. We're going to have an update here coming up soon from John Dillon, who's an attorney, and he's going to talk to you about what exactly is going on with these different lawsuits. That's the real solution. Let's get this thing removed legally, Okay, next one. Let's see. This is Frederick. He says, last week, I talked about the vote count nationwide. Was it significantly smaller than 2020? Now, that's a good question. So many of you have seen the meme that shows that 2020 and 2016 and 2012 had a certain amount of voters. And then 2020, the Biden victory over Trump, had this huge bubble of voters. And then 2024 had far fewer voters. You've seen that, right?
Right.
So the question is, how'd that happen? How come 2020 suddenly had, whatever it was, 10, 12 million additional voters? Well, I have an answer for you. Let's just kind of do some math. Can you do some math for me, Alicia?
Absolutely.
I'm not good with math. So in 2020, Biden got 81 million votes. So write that down, 81 million. Plus Donald Trump got 74 million votes. So what is that, 155 million votes. So in 2020, there were 155 million votes. And both candidates got more votes than anybody else ever had. Like that, it was more than anybody ever had. It was a huge. So let's go back to the vote count. So the vote count, getting an echo again. Okay, so the vote count for Trump is 76 million. So write that down, 76 million. It's actually 76.8 million. And the vote count for Harris is 74.3 million. So how many does that equal?
Just 150 point.
1% more. So that's, what's 1% of 150 million? So 1.5 million, right? So 1.5 million. So we're really only about 3 or maybe 4 million votes shy, which really kind of makes sense. The voter turnout wasn't as high this time around. The reason it was a bubble in 2020 was because of the COVID, and they just started doing mail-in ballots, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of hard to say. We've been real critical of the idea that there's some kind of conspiracy. Although I got to tell you, I've seen some evidence here and there that made me go, hey, wait a minute, and perked my ears up. So a few weeks ago when I saw that the vote count was 10, 12 million off, that was another one where I was like, wait. But I got to tell you, there just doesn't seem to be, a whole lot of evidence, or at least there's certainly no proof that there's any kind of weirdness going on with the ballots. Donald Trump won the popular vote. He's just barely got 50% of the popular vote. Harris got below 50%, about 48.4. He won the Electoral College. I got to tell you, he won the Electoral College pretty big time. Can you imagine if news and media had just been neutral, how much vote would have been, or how many more votes he would have gotten in the popular election?
They've never been neutral in any point in my lifetime. I don't even know what that would look like.
No, right? What would that even look like?
No, I have no idea.
So let's go one step further. So in California, it's pretty interesting. 38% of California, just over 38%, voted for Donald Trump. Kamala got 58.6%. And that is significantly better than it was. In fact, 8 counties that voted for Biden last time voted for Trump this time.
Wow.
8 counties. 8 counties. That's pretty amazing. Now, granted, most of those 8 counties are pretty long term, have been Republican, so they basically got recaptured. But the fact that Trump is got so close to 40%, Kamala really should have gotten about 60% of California, and she didn't. So Trump did a really, really good job in California. Let's see. Trump flipped 8 counties that were won by Biden in 2020. That includes Butte, Fresno, Inyo, Merced, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Joaquin, Stanislaus. I don't know how to say that. Stanislaus? I don't know. But it's pretty amazing that San Bernardino and Riverside, frankly, ever voted Democrat. They're fairly Republican, although their demographics are changing. As people are moving out of L.A., they're moving to places like Riverside. As people are moving out of San Diego, they're moving to places like Riverside and, of course, San Bernardino as well. So he did amazing, but I got to tell you, that is not a reason to rest on our laurels. That is a reason to strike while the iron's hot.
Absolutely. When you said just the Poway, for example, is just ahead by just a few dozen votes. That is, imagine if a few dozen people decided their vote didn't matter that day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the reality is, it's a great victory, but people who actually participated in that victory are really only in the dozen, maybe in the hundreds in San Diego County, in Riverside County, in Orange County. The people that actually are responsible for helping with that victory can be measured in the hundreds, probably not even the thousands, depending on how you measure, what they did. But people that actually stepped up, got out there, got people to go to the polls, or even donated to an organization, really maybe in the thousands, probably more like in the hundreds. So don't just be happy with a victory that someone else earned for you. Tough love here. Right now is the time to say, hey, you know what? I can see that good things can happen even in California. So now is the time for me to get a little more active. Just do one more thing than I did last year. If you're not a donor, especially to San Diego County gun owners, donate right now and say, hey, you know what? Good things are happening. I want to be a part of it. I want to be able to say that I helped, that I did something. Because right now, like I said, 99.9% or whatever, 99.5% of California who are happy, the people that are happy with this victory, 99.5% of them were no part of that victory. You sat on the sidelines while other people worked hard. Change that. See now that, hey, we can do good things. Support organizations that do good things and give them your dime and your time. Okay, so there you go. That's the Q&A.
All right. So next up is our segment, and this is our legal and legislative segment where we tell you what you need to know from the courts and from the legislators. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a lawyer, and neither is Mike. We are not giving you legal advice, and all legal advice should come from a properly licensed California lawyer. Our sponsor, John Dillon. Dillon is actually a lawyer. John has been helping more and more people fight the gun violence restraining orders. Those things those naughty little things. If you know somebody that's had their self-defense rights taken away without due process, give John a call. His website is dillonlawgp.com, and his phone number is 760-642-7150.
Yeah, don't forget to check out the updates on our lawsuit page on our website. Just go to sdcgo.org/lawsuits. And you can see all the different lawsuits that we're a part of. And while you're there, if all these legal terms are confusing to you, we actually put up a guide on the different legal terms. So check that out. Download the legal terms in plain terms guide, and it'll show you what some of these day is, and so some of these other legal terms that you hear. So I invited John on the show. He's gonna talk about a Second Amendment panel discussion that he was. That he was able to witness over the week here, and then he's gonna give you a quick update. We're gonna talk about each lawsuit and figure out exactly where they are in the process. So, John, are you there?
Yeah, can you see me and hear me?
I can. How you doing, man? I could. Uh-oh. Where you at, John?
Hello?
There you go. All right, bud. Can you hear us okay?
Kai.
Internet. Such a beautiful thing. All right, John, you good, bud? You can hear us?
I can hear you now, but it's off, I think.
Okay, so let's give this a try. First off, you went to a Second Amendment forum that had it was like a discussion that actually counted as continuing education for attorneys. And there were a couple of different. There was an author, a Second Amendment author. There was a professor there who specializes in Second Amendment law, and then there was somebody from the other side, I believe. And I just wanted you to recap what went.
That was really good. The three panel members were Adam Winkler, William Taylor, that was the individual Everytown, and then Stephen Halbrook, who is a renowned second litigator. He's been involved in nearly every Second Amendment case there is. Also, Second Amendment historian and a wealth of knowledge. So that was the panel members, and it was hearing from all of them, even the Everytown individuals, interesting perspective on things. But yeah, it was a general discussion about Bruin and the standard that was set forth in Bruin.
What are some good
way
takeaways
to describe it to more of the lay person or individuals who aren't intimately familiar with litigation already? So it was a good introduction to kind of what's going on now in the Second Amendment world, to Second Amendment challenges in the court system.
What were some good takeaways? What's something that you walked out of there with, maybe that you found was particularly interesting, or maybe that you didn't know, or that you knew but they phrased it a certain way? Or
I think the part that I like the most is that my opinion on the effectiveness and the standard that Bruin applied was.
I think we're losing John. All right. Hey, John, you there? All right. Okay. We're going to cut it. Okay. So it was an interesting.
But it was interesting.
Hey, man, we got to cut
Yep.
you. It's the connection's just not.
Can you call?
I don't know. We got to cut it. We got to cut it. I'm sorry, John. We'll get back to you. But this discussion was good. It was, I got a lot of really good feedback. We were going to talk about exactly what was going on with each of the cases. And I'm just, if you go to San Diego County Gunowners.com/lawsuits or go to SDCGO.org/lawsuits, there's some pretty interesting information up there. And I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a rundown. First off, that legal terms and plain terms guide is actually very, very interesting. It goes over terms like en banc, grant cert, what is a summary judgment, what's a stay, or what's an injunction, what is a facial challenge, what does it mean to be vacated and remanded. And if there are any legal terms that you hear and don't know the answers, please send it to us, and we'll add it to the guide. This is going to be a living, breathing document, as they say. And so the more legal terms that come up, the better. So what's going on with some of the lawsuits? The reality is there's kind of this weird wait and see attitude. And the reality is a lot of people ask, well, all right, can you just can we force the Ninth Circuit to have an opinion? And the reality is no. They can sit on it for as long as they want. And what they're doing is the Duncan case is kind of making a lot of the other lawsuits sit and wait. So you got the Miller versus Bonta case. Miller, that's the assault weapons case. And they basically said, look, we're not going to do anything with this case until we see what happens with the large capacity magazine case. So it's in this wait and see pattern, unfortunately. The Renna case is the challenge to the handgun roster, and there's actually another case, CRPA. They're basically two cases in one. They're both going after the roster, and what you are seeing is that more guns are being added to the roster because that case put a hold on enforcing the microstamping. So that was the big holdup, is that, hey, you have to, in order to sell a handgun in California through a dealer, you have to have a microstamp on it that leaves a mark on the casing before the casing's ejected. And they basically said, look, we're going to put a hold on that until the case is totally resolved. And it's a very good sign that the state decided that they weren't going to fight that they were just going to let that hold happen. So right now, manufacturers can get pistols onto the roster if they choose. They don't have to have this micro stamping. That's why you're seeing like the Sig 365, the Hellcat. That's why you're seeing, what's another one? What's something else? Those are the only two I always remember.
The 2.0. There's the Sig, the 365 XL. There's the Hellcat Pro.
Yeah.
The Sig not the 365, but the X Legion, the 320.
Yeah, the Legion.
Oh, we got John back?
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Let's try this again then.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go with this. So let's talk about, like, for example, the Win case, the NGUYEN versus Bonta case, which is the challenge to California's 1 in 30. Now, there is no more 1 in 30. So what to give us an update on that? Is that ever going to come back, or what's the update on the 1 in 30?
Yeah, so this is what happened. So we won at the district court. The court ruled that it was unconstitutional. You can't limit one firearm per every 30 days, because that's what it was up until that point. If you wanted to buy 2 guns, you quite literally had to wait 2 months in order to, actually obtain both of those guns. That was appealed by the state. Then they had oral arguments, I want to say back in July, and a day after oral arguments concluded, the Court of Appeals issued an order lifting the stay. Now, when the district court ruled in our favor saying, hey, this is unconstitutional, it put a stay or an injunction on the enforcement of this 1 in 30 firearms rule. So then, would allow people to buy as many guns as they want at one point. The state, when they appealed, they asked for a stay on that order pending appeal, saying, hey, put a pause, don't let anyone buy anything yet until we've litigated this at appeal. So a day after oral argument, the court on its own just issued an order saying, no, we're lifting this stay. You can go and buy your guns, and there's no 1 in 30 firearm. Yeah, and in fact, I think the next day I had transferred 5, so it was a good day.
Okay, so the 1 in 30, there's no more 1 in 30 law right now. You can buy as many guns as you like in a 30-day period. It doesn't matter.
Yes, and although we don't have the final decision yet from the Court of Appeals, but the fact that they lifted the stay pending appeal is a huge indicator, because they did that on their own. No one even requested it. So oral arguments went so bad for the state that the court itself was like, no, we got to go ahead and allow people to exercise their constitutional rights.
All right, let's do kind of a lightning round here. So Jones versus Bonta. It used to be Jones versus Bonta. That's the
now it's Chavez v. Bonta.
Chavez v. Bonta, which challenges the ban of adults who are 18, 19, and 20 to purchase firearms. What's going on with that one?
Yeah, so we submitted cross motions for summary judgment. State submitted theirs. We submitted ours at the same time. All the briefing was done on that, and we're quite literally just waiting for the district court's decision on those motions for summary judgment.
Okay, good. Miller versus Bonta. That's the challenge to California's assault weapons ban. I kind of touched on it, but can you confirm and talk about exactly what's going on?
We won at the district court. So district court ruled in our favor, ruled that the assault weapon ban and all the regulations with it were unconstitutional. The state appealed, of course, and we actually went and had oral arguments. I think it was last January. But then right after oral arguments, the Court of Appeals actually stayed the case pending the Duncan decision. And the Duncan case is Duncan v. Bonta. That's the high-capacity magazine, so they call it challenge. So the challenge to the state's ban on any magazines that can hold over 10 rounds. So right now, Miller's been paused, and they're waiting for the court to issue a decision in the Duncan case, and then they'll apply that same standard, so to speak, to the Miller case.
And what's going on with the Duncan case?
The Duncan case, we're waiting on a decision with the en banc Court of Appeals.
And there's no way to compel them to hurry up. We just got to sit and wait.
Yeah, unfortunately, when it comes to federal appellate courts, there's no time limit. They don't have to issue any kind of decision in 30, 60, 90, 180 days. they issue the decision when it's ready to go.
Okay. The Renevert v. Bonta case is the challenge. We just talked a little bit about it. It's the challenge to California's handgun roster. What's going on with the Rena case?
Yeah, so again, I kind of caught a little tail end of it. You were talking about the micro stamping requirement. That's no longer a requirement. That's why you're seeing these new guns being added. There's still some other aspects of the regulations with the handgun roster that are being challenged in that case. But it went to an appeal, but based off of an appeal on a preliminary injunction. But then they vacated that pending the Duncan decision as well. So this is another case that's kind of been paused, waiting for the Duncan decision to come out.
Gotcha. Now, the Farr v. San Diego case, that's the challenge to the city of San Diego's ban on 80% kits. What's going on with that case?
Yes. So that one also has been stayed, but this is not pending Duncan. It's actually stayed pending a decision on Nevada called Palmer. And basically that case is dealing with another, 80% lowers, 80% kit ban. And because that's in the Ninth Circuit, the courts decided that, hey, let's let the Ninth Circuit decide that case because that will be a controlling case. And then we'll issue we'll go forward on the challenge to the city's ban.
Gotcha. And it used to be Brandeis v. Bonta, but it is now Barba v. Bonta, which is that's FPC. It's the Second Amendment lawsuit to protect gun owners' privacy. What's going on with that one?
Yeah, so we got a preliminary injunction on that, but then that went to the Court of Appeals, and the preliminary injunction was reversed. And so the case was actually remanded back down to the district court. So when the Court of Appeals remands the case, that means they're pushing it back down to the district court, and it's essentially going to be reheard at the district court level.
Why would they do that? Why do they rehear it? In light of new information, or why do they do that?
Well, in this one, it's interesting because the state was appealing a preliminary injunction. And what a preliminary injunction is it's quite literally a preliminary decision. It's not a decision on the entire merits of the case. So it's something that's done early on in litigation. And the state appealed that decision, and it went to the Court of Appeals. And so the Court of Appeals pushed it back down kind of with instructions saying, hey, this preliminary injunction, we disagree, it shouldn't have been granted. So now the case gets pushed back down to the district court to go forward fully on the merits, just not, with that preliminary injunction issue kind of rejected by the Court of Appeals.
Okay, gotcha. All right, Richards v. Bonta, which is the
10-day waiting period.
10-day wait period, specifically for people who already own a gun, but it seems to be they seem to be discussing
CCW and COE.
Yeah, but if you own a gun or have a CCW, COE, but they seem to be talking about 10-day wait periods in general. So what's going on with that case?
Yeah, so cross motions for summary judgment were just actually recently filed. The briefing on all those was finished up this last October. So we're waiting on the decision from the district court on that. And
so any day now, they might come out with some kind of decision about the 10-day wait period. Yeah,
it could be tomorrow. It could be 2 months from now. It's hard to tell. Again, it's the federal court system, so there's no real time period that they have to issue it. But, I would say that one looks really good. If you're considering the historical justifications for any type of gun regulation under the Bruin standard, there's nothing that could possibly support this 10-day waiting period.
Gotcha. All right, and Carolera v. Bonta, which is it's the SB2.
The really public carry bans.
Yeah, there you go. What's going on with the public carry bans?
So we won some areas when it came to stopping bans on public carry. Lost some other areas that were deemed sensitive places. Amusement parks, stadiums, parks, libraries, hospitals. Those are all okay. But you still have casinos, bars, that kind of stuff. Schools obviously wasn't specifically addressed in that case, but it is a part of the general carry restrictions. So we're going right now. It's en banc rehearing petitions have been filed, I think, on both sides, so both parties, because the state's not happy that there were some areas that the court said, no, that's not a sensitive place, you can carry. and the plaintiffs are justifiably, challenging the areas that the district court said, hey, these are sensitive places when, in fact, they're really not. So both parties are petitioning for en banc rehearing, and, we'll see if the court grants that.
Gotcha. Just by way of clarification, John, I have a question about that. Now, these sensitive spaces referenced there, that specifically, Carrie, is there anything mentioned or any reason why any of these locations would prevent a CCW holder from legally storing their firearm in their vehicle? Or is it straight up?
I would not. So, like, if let's say you're driving and you put it in a safe in your car,
correct.
I would just avoid those areas, at least for now, while carrying.
Because I was reading it and it didn't state, but I was just curious for your.
So yeah, the lawyer in me's got to tell everyone to be more than anything.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, and then last is the 11% tax. That's NRA, SAF, and then FPC. Everyone's getting together to sue the 11%. We're right at the beginning of that, or is anything to report?
Yeah, I don't think anything has been any substantive stuff has been filed yet, but that's a fairly new one.
Okay. All right. Well, cool, John. Well, that's it. I think that gives everybody an update. We get questions all the time. I swear we could update everybody on a dozen lawsuits, and then they'll say, hey, what about this 13th one? Everybody wants to know what's going on with the lawsuits. The reality is lawsuits are extremely important. But it's kind of the final thing, right? I mean, if you can't get the right people elected, and then you can't stop the wrong people from passing bad laws, then the very last line of defense is a lawsuit, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of money, but they're crucial to our success. And I know a lot of really smart people are working very, very hard on it, and you're one of those guys, John. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
All right, man.
All right, guys.
Yeah, you bet. That's everything you need to know for this week.
That's it. That's our legal and legislative segment.
Okay, the next thing we have is a very cool interview. I got to interview a guy from SIG. He's one of the main muckety mucks from SIG, and one of the higher ups who really knows what's going on. And I got to tell you, I was extremely impressed with how far SIG has come in the last 15 years and the things that they've developed. They've truly become a leader. But before we play the interview, sponsor is Cargo, cases and rugged gear outfitters in El Cajon. Cargostores.com. Check them out online. Go to their store at 423 Broadway, El Cajon, and use GOR for a 10% off on their website, or mention Gun Owners Radio when you go in, or SDCGO at the store. Check them out for all your cases, whether you're carrying watches or drones or guns or gear or whatever, and all your rugged gear outfitter needs. They have all kinds of really cool stuff. Duck in there, tell them, hey, thanks for sponsoring Gun Owners Radio, and check out and see if there's something there that you want to buy, and of course get 10% off on. So without further ado, we're going straight to the interview. Go ahead. Tom Taylor from SIG. How are you?
Doing great, Michael. How you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for participating in Second. Tom Taylor from SIG. How are you?
Doing great, Michael. How you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for participating in Second Amendment Foundation's Gun Rights Policy Conference a few weeks ago. I thought that was a really cool event.
Yeah, it was incredible. We have at SIG, and personally, we've gotten much more involved in the Second Amendment Foundation, as they're just doing, so much of the work behind the scenes in the litigation world, when the world of legislation has sort of become murky, if you will, over the last few years, and it's just been such an honor to work with them and see the success rate they've had with the court cases and the litigation that they're doing, and for whatever part SIG's played in helping lead the gun industry into that, helping them and supporting them, we're really happy and proud about that.
Well, good. I was particularly fascinated by your talk. I enjoyed some of the things that you were talking about. I enjoyed everything that you were talking about, but some of the things I didn't know about SIG, and I decided that we needed to get to know SIG a lot more. So that's why I wanted you to come on and talk. First, let's start with your background. How did you? What's your background?
Yeah. So yes, it's so when I talk to people in groups and so forth, one of the ways I start the presentation is I say, how many people know the history of SIG? And very few hands go up. But yeah, the J.P. Sauer and Son, which is half the Sig Sauer, was founded in 1751 in Germany. And
wow.
Yeah, that was, it's the second oldest company after Beretta, as you said, continuously operating company. And then another company, Swiss Industrial Group, which was a wagon wheel company, was founded in 1853. And in 1859, they bid on the Swiss military contract for their rifle. They won that, and then so the companies continued to operate, over the next 100+ years until 1975, when the two companies decided to collaborate to take SIG's expertise in handgun and collaborate with Sauer, and that became Sig Sauer, and of course the SIG Classic line of guns, the P220, the 226, the 229. 239, the gun, it's not available anymore, but 239 was one of the original classics. And of course, SIG, Swiss Industrial Group, already had its handgun legacy firmly cemented with the P49, which is now known as the P210, one of the greatest handguns ever built. And so, yeah, the companies came together in 75. In the 80s, they came to the U.S. as just a distributor. It's called SIG Arms, and that was a company was having a really hard time making it because purchasing the guns from the German company and distributing them in the U.S., the prices were just so high. It was by 2000, when our current owners bought the company, it was a $40 million company losing $8 million a year, which is just crazy. They just couldn't make money. And from 2000 to 2004, they went through 5 CEOs until Ron Cohen came in 2004, who's our current CEO. And I think the company was 80 employees, and within the first few months of his coming, he had to lay off 20 just to try to make a go of it as a company. So the company had reduced to 60 employees, wasn't in the black. And so over the last 20 years, Ron really he began to bring manufacturing to the U.S. And, now, of course, all the products are made in the U.S. The German facilities and German company don't exist anymore. It's all made in the USA. Our owners are still German.
But SIG is all made in the USA.
All USA.
I didn't know that.
There's everything is essentially made for the firearms. It's made here in New Hampshire, where I am. All of our ammunition is made in Arkansas. Our office facility is in Portland, Oregon. There's a big base of optics engineering and expertise out there because of some of the good optics companies that are out in the Portland area. Yeah, but it's all organically made in the U.S. now. Our owners still own Blaser and Mauser and Sauer and a lot of other smaller companies that are based in Europe. But Sig Sauer holistically is now all U.S.
You know what's interesting about that, Tom, from my personal experience, is I bought my first gun in 1997, I think. It might have been 98. And the first gun I bought was a Glock 19. And I remember, getting into it, getting into firearms in general. And I remember, there were 1911s, Beretta, 92s, and SIG, and there were all these guns kind of floating around. And I definitely wasn't engaged in the gun community, and a lot of the opinions on guns and whatever hadn't really been formulated yet. And 1911s were still kind of old, your grandfather's gun, so that kind of was around. But I remember where I'm going with this is I remember thinking to myself that SIG was kind of this elite gun, kind of this European elite gun. And I remember kind of thinking like, well, Glock's a little bit more American. It's made in Smyrna, Georgia. Where here as, no, SIG's actually all made in America, and I think that has changed significantly over the last 20 plus years to where SIG is like this extremely reliable precision tool, And a lot of people, your 365 is extremely popular as CCWs have become more popular.
Yep.
And I've watched that transition to where it's almost like if you're buying a SIG, if you're carrying a SIG, if you're a SIG person, you're kind of one of these people who is in the know. You know what's going on. Like, okay, there are other guns out there, and they're okay, they're good, they have their pluses and minuses. But after you get through that initial, I don't know what I don't know, you buy a SIG. That's kind of my impression of SIG right now, and I think that's a testament to all you guys promoting SIG and doing such a good job with your product line.
Well, we hope that's the case. I mean, we do like to consider ourselves a top-of-the-line gun. In those years when you were getting into the gun industry, Glock had quickly become the standard for a semi-automatic pistol. Smith & Wesson, where I was in those years, the revolver, that was a concealed carry gun. It was a J-frame revolver, and everybody carried those. There were some other things out there like Carr, and there were North American Arms, Keltec, Rohrbaugh. I mean, there were some sort of non-name brand companies that were making semi-automatic pocket pistols. Of course, the Walther PPK was a classic, but it didn't exist. So when it came out, they established the standard, and so they were an Austrian company, but they established a good strong foothold here. They became an iconic sort of cultural thing with police shows and rap music and a lot of things that made them an iconic company. And SIG was out there as sort of the higher end product. Winning the Navy SEAL contract in 1985 really put SIG on a different level. A lot of people that knew guns knew that SIG was a high end product. In '84, when the U.S. military did its evaluation, and the finalists were Smith & Wesson, the 5906 pistol, the Beretta 92, and the SIG 226. And long story short, there were a lot of reasons why the Beretta was chosen. There may or may not have been a U.S. airport or air base that showed up in southern Italy after they were awarded that contract. So we think there was some horse trading that went on with that deal, because a lot of people would tell you that the Beretta 92 would, not to talk bad about my competitors, but they would tell you that the Smith & Wesson 5906 and the 226 were superior products. But they won that contract. The rest was history for them for the next 25 years, actually 35 years, I guess it was. But Glock really established itself. It was affordable. It worked. There was a lot of really good things. But the SIG 226 and the fact that the Navy SEALs carried it for 20 years really established it. But they were very expensive. Those German-made guns that you would experience in the 90s and the 2000s and really all the way up to the aughts of 2000 were German made, and they were very, very expensive. But yeah, the investments that we've made to make SIG that brand that's so highly trusted. Whatever you read or hear about SIG, I mean, starting in about 2014, SIG launched the 320, the MCX rifle, the MPX rifle, ammunition, air guns, suppressors, optics, all came within about an 18-month period. And then about a year and a half later, we launched the P365. And somewhere within that mix, we started the Legion line. So within about a 2.5 year period, SIG launched really 9 product lines that, to think that the company did that in 2 years is otherworldly if you understand how product development and manufacturing and all those things work. But
let's talk about the 365.
Yep.
So going back to what you were saying about the lawsuits in the 80s and 90s, where they were trying to nail gun manufacturers for crime and that sort of thing, I don't think people fully realize or have ever really seen or read about the history of anti-gun advocacy that really kind of kicked off. I mean, throughout history, when in the 30s, there was a big piece of legislation, and then in the late 60s there was a big piece of legislation. But it was really in the 80s when the anti-gunners got organized, and I don't think that some of the concepts that we take for granted now hadn't been fully formulated. I don't. When I was a kid in the 80s, I didn't even learn 4 universal rules. I learned 1: treat every gun as if it's loaded.
Yeah.
And the other 3 kind of came along. I think a lot of people hadn't really thought about the fact that, hey, the Second Amendment's not about hunting. Back then there was kind of no difference between hunting and self-defense or whatever. So all that stuff had to happen. And I know there were some mistakes made by organizations and manufacturers and whatever, but I got to tell you, within the last 10 years, the pro-Second Amendment effort has developed leaps and bounds, and it's been amazing to watch. Part of that, though, is when Florida kicked off their CCW program and said, hey, we're going to go shall issue. And that culture, I think, started changing the policy. The policy started changing the culture. But where I'm going with this is there really wasn't there weren't a lot of dedicated concealed carry options. And I didn't realize how impactful the 365 was in influencing other manufacturers to come up with a dedicated carry option. And the 365 is, and it's so foreign to us in California because we couldn't get it. Because of the roster, and now we can finally get it. And so given that context, talk about the 365 and why it was developed and how it's doing and what its niche is.
Yeah, I think as I said earlier, the standard forever was a Smith & Wesson J-frame. I mean, that's just what you carried if you carried concealed carry. There were some others, but Smith was the standard. And then in about 2009 or so, Ruger launched the LCP, and that really was the gun that was a major manufacturer that launched a concealed carry gun, and they sold hundreds of thousands of LCPs, and then shortly behind that, Smith & Wesson launched the Shield. The Shield, which probably then eventually I think leapfrogged the Ruger LCP as the standard. And when I came to SIG, was one of the things that I asked our CEO and our law enforcement head was also asking him the same thing. And, our concealed carry gun was a 238 or a 938, which are legal in California. But, there are many 1911, very good gun. A lot of people carried them, but it was definitely a niche product, and it was kind of expensive. And so, we talked to Ron and we said, when he said, what should be our next thing we're thinking about? And myself, leading commercial sales and marketing, and then our law enforcement leader said, we gotta do a striker fire pocket pistol. We gotta do something. And one thing that's always been a standard at SIG is Ron rarely will launch a project or product that's me too. Because it would have been very easy for SIG to build just a pocket pistol just like everybody else. But he asked us, what do you think is the number one thing people are looking for in a pocket pistol? And we both at the same time said capacity. Yeah. And so we set out to build a gun that, how do we get more rounds in a small package? And, a year and a half later, maybe 2 years later, the 365 came out. And, so it was really, when you look at the evolution of name brand, big time firearms, the Ruger LCP sort of started it. The Shield came on and did its thing, and it was very well thought of. And then the 365 came out, and that changed everything because you had all the rounds you needed to protect yourself. You didn't have to compromise with 6 or 7 rounds. And all those other companies realized that they had to adjust and build a gun that had similar capacity. So then you had the Shield with the 10 capacity rounds. You had the Hellcat. You had others that came out, with their 10-round products and more, 12-round and 15-round and so on. But it just started something where, a concealed carry pistol in those earlier years were, you start out with 5 rounds in a J-frame, and then you went to 6 or 7 rounds in a semi-automatic pistol, and so it was a compromise. If the fight ever got beyond, 6 or 7 bullets, you were in trouble. With a P365, you didn't have to compromise that, and so I think the world realized that you hope you don't ever need it. You hope you only need 1 or 2 rounds if you do need it. But if the crap really hits the fan and you need the capacity, you've got it, and it just sort of changed the world. And so, the P365, when you look at all the sales channels that we have in the gun industry to track that sort of thing, it's been the best-selling pistol, full size or otherwise, on the market, whether it's a compact, a full size, or whatever. The 365 has become the best-selling gun in the marketplace almost since its
congratulations.
Yeah, so it's definitely become the standard of concealed carry. And then now in the 365 world, you guys don't have it in California yet, although you can build it with the components once you buy your California compliant 365. But it's evolved now to our P365 X Macro, which is essentially a very thin, compact gun that carries 17 rounds. So it's anywhere from large concealed carry to a duty weapon. And so the 365 now has a product that you don't have to compromise shootability, accuracy, or concealed carry, or at least minimalistic, carry, if you will. So yeah, it's been wonderful to be part of that project and product with the P365.
Good. And how long the 365's been on the roster for? What, about a year?
About a year ago, yeah, about this time last year, yeah. And between the 365 and the 320, we want to thank the people of California, because tens of thousands of units of that gun has sold in California between the M18, the 365, and some of the other guns that have been added to the roster. More are coming, by the way. But yeah, it's been so fun to watch. When I first came in the industry, and you look at sales by state through our BATF data, California was always number one, even with all the restrictions. And then over time, that eroded a little bit. Leapfrogged it, and Texas leapfrogged it, and I think even today, California, it vacillates, I think, between third and fourth. Pennsylvania's in there, but it's still the third or fourth largest gun sales state in the country, even given all the restrictions and the limited guns that people can buy. So I think as more options come and more guns get added to the roster, it's going to be interesting to watch California potentially climb, back into that the running with Texas and Florida as the leading state. So we're so happy that happened, because I'd get excited talking to somebody from California and say, oh my God, the 365 is so great for this reason or that reason, and they would want to punch me in the nose and say, yeah, thanks for teasing me with that. And I have to say, sorry, I forget. When we talk about a new product in California, it was just so unfortunate that was the case.
Well, it was, and it's getting solved, and I think people are surprised to hear what we pointed out about California, in that California buys a lot of guns, and because so much of what people think of as California is L.A., San Francisco, and a one building in Sacramento. Most of the rest of California is normal. And we look and act like the rest of the country for the most part. So yeah, we are a really big, Second Amendment. We are a really big gun state, just because we have so many people and they live outside of these cities. Yeah, it's and it was interesting too. When I remember when I bought my Glock 19. It was like an argument over, well, a lot of people thought a Glock 19 was too small, and now a Glock 19 is too big compared to the quality of smaller guns. The 365 doesn't feel like a small gun, and I have weird hands. I have big hands. I have big palms and short, fat fingers, and the 365 is extremely comfortable. It doesn't feel like a tiny little gun. The ergonomics on it are amazing.
When you hold up a Glock 19 and you hold up a 365X macro and you say, which one holds 17 rounds? It's kind of like, well, that one holds 15 and this one holds 17. It's like, it's a little bit shocking to people when you think about it, that, that little package can hold that many rounds. Now, if we had stayed with the same technology that we were able to accomplish the 10-round 365, which then became the 365 XL, gave you 15 rounds, the X macro would have been 15. But through our continuous improvement and 400 engineers running around the building, we were able to take that spring that enabled us for the original technology and the stack and a half magazine and all those things, and we made the spring even flatter. And so the technology actually changed between those original 365s and the X macro to be able to, instead of building a 15-round gun, which it would have been with the original technology, it became a 17-round gun. And so, and now we even, just a few months ago, we launched the 365 Fuse, which is the X macro size frame, but it has a long slide. So, I mean, that gun is as accurate as any full-size pistol on the marketplace. And I would argue in a lot of ways it's more accurate than a lot of full-size guns in the marketplace. But it's a product line that it gives you everything you need, from total concealability to a full-size gun that people have actually started flirting with competition with the 365 Fuse.
That's awesome. And there were two big barriers to sales, especially sales of new guns, new models, newly developed models. The roster, which is getting chipped away. You no longer have to comply with the microstamp, thanks to a lawsuit. And then the people are getting issued CCWs, which is another big factor. Just San Diego County alone has gone from 1,100 in 2017 to over 22,000 today, and growing by about 500 or 600 per month. And that's just one county. And you're seeing that in other counties, Orange County, Riverside County. So that drives product as well. And that was a combination of good old-fashioned activism and, of course, an important lawsuit, the Bruin lawsuit, which was amazing. SIG has been. It looks like you guys really want to emphasize and have a big commitment towards improving, public policy when it comes to Second Amendment, when it comes to guns, which I think is great and awesome. Well, thank you from everybody. If you could let everybody know, all your SIG employees know, that thank you and congratulations from Gun Owners Radio and from San Diego County Gun Owners and Orange County Gun Owners and Inland Empire Gun Owners. And all of us here in occupied territory are so thankful. And again, congratulations on all your success.
Oh, so good luck out there. Let's keep winning and keep buying SIGs out there. We'll keep getting them added to the roster.
You bet. Thanks, Tom.
All right. Thanks, Michael.
All right, that was a great interview, and I can't wait to see more from SIG in California. All right, next up is our curtain call with Alicia. This one is an armed bystander fatally shoots attacker during violent altercation in Billings, Montana. Nope, that's not right, is it?
No, that's right.
Is that right? Okay,
That's
cool.
well, I mean, if it's not right, it's what I'm prepared to talk about anyway.
Well, either way, it's happening.
It is.
All right, cool.
All right, so
fire away, Alicia.
All right, the article comes from just from a story out of USA Carry's website, and as you stated, comes out of Billings, Montana. Now, when I think of Montana, it's cold.
Yeah.
Right. So this story occurred just a little over a week ago, November 14th. So it's a recent story. I don't know what these people were doing out in the middle of the night. It happened just before 2 a.m. And we have a total of 3 people that got involved in some type of altercation. There was some type of verbal fight. Okay.
Yeah. They got into some kind of argument. They're out in the middle of the night. They got into an argument.
That's it.
All right.
Nothing good happens after midnight, right?
That's true.
Right. So they got into some type of verbal altercation. So what happened is it appears as though it was 2 men and 1 woman. So the 1 man and 1 woman appeared to have been a pair of some type. And this third person does not appear to be part of the trio. The article is not super clear, but kind of hints in that way. So what happens is there's this verbal altercation, some type of fight, and it goes from being a verbal to a shooting.
Jeez.
Right? So we have this gentleman, man. He pulls out a firearm in response to this verbal altercation, and he decides to settle it his own way.
Oh, geez.
And he takes shots at both the man and the woman. He does hit both of them.
Okay.
So they are shot. And in response to that, the woman decided it was time to defend herself, and she pulled out her own firearm.
Good for her.
So the man that was with her apparently did not have one, or at least did not pull it. She pulled, she used it, and she was a much better shot than the other guy, and he did lose his life.
Women are better shots, and that's too bad. Okay. So does it sound like it was just a matter of it was just an argument that went wrong?
That's the way the article sounds. Yeah.
Did it say anything? Did either of them have a record?
Does not mention either way, but they do say there was no arrest made. So it sounds from what little bit that we have. No, but actually the story doesn't just end there. So we had the one guy who shoots the pair, hits both of them, non-serious, non-life-threatening injuries. The woman does pull her own firearm, uses it. Not only does she pull it, but there was a bystander that was also there. So a good Samaritan, if you will. So the people that were involved initially, so we have the 3, just kind of by way, I know we talked about statistics in the past. We've talked about ages and kind of those involved in this. We have the one who pulled his firearm first and shot the pair. He was 46. The woman was 42, and the gentleman that was with her was 38. So kind of all kind of in that general age range there. Our good Samaritan, 25.
Now, what did the Good Samaritan do? I didn't. He
witnessed the fight.
It was just a witness.
He was just a witness, not involved. So he was 25 years old. He happened to also be carrying a firearm. And in response to this altercation and seeing what was going on, he decided to get involved. And I think that there is and we don't know whose shot was the one that ended, that took the life in the end. But the woman and this good bystander, they both fired upon him.
They did. Okay,
They
so
both
the
did.
lady who was already shot,
Yep.
she fired at the guy.
Yep.
And then the bystander who was carrying illegally, he fired at the guy as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, interesting.
And this is Montana. So what happens, in case you're not aware, Montana, not only is Montana constitutional carry, I believe it's 21 and up, if I remember correctly in the laws. So you can either open or you can conceal, no permit required, and 21 and up can do that. So if you can legally own a firearm in Montana, you can carry. There's no process or permit required.
Okay.
Either open or concealed. However, the article, I'd like to go back and actually read a portion of the article to you, because if you think about this, here in the state of California, we have a very specific and particular set of laws that kind of outline third-party encounters, right? So the article here is that, of course, is speaking to Montana law, but I feel like it's very applicable, and I thought that it was good food for thought to kind of read and give here. So it states, law enforcement secured the scene, and all parties involved and witness to remain present for questioning. No arrests have been made. So just kind of by way of a recap of the end of that. The incident highlights both the unpredictable nature of violent encounters and the critical role bystanders can play in life-threatening situations. While intervening can save lives, it also carries significant legal and personal risk, especially when strangers are involved. Understanding the legal framework for self-defense in your jurisdiction is essential before taking action. Interveners must act responsibly, ensuring that there is clear and immediate threat to life, and carefully assess the situation to avoid unintended consequences. And I feel that so that's end quote there. I feel that that's really important, that's really insightful, because the reality is here, especially in California, if you get involved in a third-party encounter, doesn't matter what your good intentions are.
Right.
Doesn't matter what information you didn't know because you didn't have time to learn all the facts.
Right.
You're going to be held responsible. If you defend the person that started the problem, right, you can have some legal issues.
So this, it sounds like this witness did everything okay.
He did.
But it could have so easily, like, we don't know. Maybe the guy that he shot was actually defending his own life.
Right.
Maybe he was the it's such a difficult situation.
Yeah. Because the hard part, the reality is, if you don't have all the facts, and the truth is, in most situations, you're not going to have time to get to know what the whole history is, what happened, who started it, who said what to who was the instigator, right? Yeah. Who escalated it, and that can make a difference, especially here in California, where our self-defense laws are a little bit different than Montana. And
I think the biggest lesson here is
carry that firearm.
Well, but it just wasn't worth it. Whatever they were arguing about. Yeah, it was a verbal altercation.
Yeah.
Whoever, whether, I don't know, jaywalking or they just started mouthing off to each other.
Don't know.
And it escalated to this.
Right.
It just wasn't worth it. Just walk away.
Absolutely.
Gosh.
Yeah, the only fight that you win is the one you don't get into.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, this guy lost his life.
He did. Over a verbal altercation, some type of fight.
Yeah,
a verbal fight.
And you have a woman and a bystander, and they don't know who, but they both shot a guy who died. They got to live with that for the rest of their life.
Right.
It's very, very good that they were able to defend themselves. It's very, very good that they survived. All that's very, very good. But something else to think about, I think, is this never should have happened.
Absolutely.
Should just walk away.
De-escalate, escape, and avoid.
Interesting. And that all happened in Montana, huh?
10 days ago. Yep.
Interesting.
Montana, 10 days ago.
And it was at usacarry.com, right?
Correct.
Armed bystander fatally shoots attacker during violent altercation in Billings, Montana. That's very interesting. All right, cool. All right, what else we got to know? Anything else we got to know about that article?
Really, my key thing that I wanted to just kind of talk about was just the idea of the third-party encounter.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel that that's something that we all want to be the hero. We all want to be the good guy, right? Yeah. We all think that we can't stand for injustice, or we can't stand to see someone else get hurt. And by no means am I saying you can't or that you shouldn't. Yeah. Just understand the law and be careful.
Exactly. Step up by all means, but make sure that you're doing the right thing to the right person.
Right. Because it comes down to your own freedom and your family and just your life and your freedom and your money. Really is what it can come down to. Because if you defend the wrong person in the eyes of the law, it doesn't matter what your intentions are.
There you go.
That's it.
Curtain Call with Alicia Curtin, where we talk about defensive gun uses and bring some interesting situations to you each and every week. All right, let's go on to deployment. This is where we need you to be this week. And, of course, this is brought to you by Red, White, and Badass Brew Coffee. Go to rwbbcoffee.com and use GOR to get 15% off. Order yourself some coffee. Again, that's rwbbcoffee.com. Get 15% off on your order by using GOR, Gun Owners Radio. Okay, this is, of course, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. It's coming up this week. I hope that you spend it with family, or if you can't spend it with family, spend it with loved ones instead of your family. But by all means, have a peaceful and happy Thanksgiving. So there isn't a whole lot going on, but we did want to bring a couple things to your attention. There is another communications class coming up. It is on December 7th. So it's Intro to Communications class. Sign up today. Spaces are filling up. Learn how to stay connected during emergencies. It's a $360 class. Go to gunownersradio.com to sign up for the December 7th class, which, of course, is happening at in El Cajon at American American Shooter. Lunch is included.
Mike's bringing spaghetti.
Yeah. If you sign up, you're going to get a Baofeng UV5R programmed radio, but this is not just a ham class. It's not just a ham radio class. There's a lot of information in this class about communicating, especially in a time of crisis or emergency. It's just that ham is a big part of it, but it is not a ham radio class. So if you want to learn how to communicate without a service subscription like AT&T, Verizon, or Starlink, this is the class for you. Man, this class is really super popular too.
Absolutely.
They're all filling up. Everybody really having a great time. They just had one on Saturday. It went really well. It was a full class. So don't wait. Sign up. Check it out. It should be super interesting. We're also bringing Masad Ayub in to town. Let's see, March 7th, 8th, and 9th. There's going to have 2 lectures, 2 classroom lectures, 2 live fire. I think the live fire is full. It is. The live fire class is totally full. You missed out. If you didn't buy yet, you missed out. So this is Mastering Self-Defense. Train with Masad Ayub. Tickets are on sale now. The live fire class is full, but there's still space at the MAG 20 classroom course. So at the very least, attend the classroom course. Armed Citizens Rules of Engagement is the live classroom. That's the title. This is a must for CCW holders and instructors, pretty much anybody that owns a gun for self-defense. So at least go to the class. Should be extremely interesting. It's going to be very informative. And you're going to get to meet Masad Ayub, who's actually going to be in the studio that week. We're going to get to talk to him. And again, happy Thanksgiving. Forget about politics. Forget about guns for a while. Just go fill up on turkey and watch the Lions and the Packers play. Or I don't know who's playing on Thanksgiving. Usually it's Lions and Packers.
No clue.
Yeah, I don't know either. But have fun. Just relax. Take a load off. We had some great victories this election season. If your wacky in-laws decide to try to argue with them, just point at the scoreboard. Show them who won. And have some fun eating turkey and relax and smile and then take a big, big nap. All right, let's see. I think it's time to talk to Sam. Is it time to talk to Sam?
Really quick, though, I just want to give a quick shout out to Mike White for his Super Chat donation.
Nice. Thank you, Mike. Mike White, super fan, Super White. Donation. Thanks for following us. Thanks, everybody in the chat. Thor and all those guys. Particularly, thank you, Mike, for being a super fan and donating to us. Such an honor to have you. So thank you so much. All right, we ready for Sam? Okay, good. So Sam, my nephew, we found out years ago, is extremely good at gun trivia. So if you send us a question and we use it on the air, we'll give you a hat or a shirt. And if you stump my nephew, then you're going to get a very, very special prize. So Stump My Nephew, sponsored by Seal One, seal1.com. That's seal and then the number 1.com. Seal1.com makes gun ownership easier and smell better. If you're looking for a cleaner and lubricant all-in-one that works and works well and doesn't smell horrible, then check out Seal One. Either go to their website, order from their website, or go to your favorite gun shop, ask for Seal One at your favorite gun shop. If they don't have it, ask them why. Tell them that's all you use. It's really, really good stuff. Thank you so much, Dwight from Seal One. You guys are so supportive of us, and we really, really appreciate it. We encourage all our listeners to switch to Seal One. All right, Sam, you there?
Yeah, how are you guys?
Good, man. How are you?
I can't complain.
Good, because I don't want to hear it. No, I'm just kidding. All right. You ready for this? This is a question sent in from Winston from Salem. He asks, "Don't go off half-cocked. Why and what does it mean?"
Winston from Salem. That might be Winston from Winston-Salem. That's in North Carolina.
Could be.
Don't go off half-cocked. What does that mean and why?
Yeah.
I don't have a handy demonstration firearm on me right now.
Good, because it would get us
If I had
banned.
a Smith & Wesson Model 10 on hand, that would be great. Half-cocked refers to something with hammer-fired pistols and revolvers and some older flintlock muskets and percussion cap-fired muskets, where you would have a fully cocked position where the hammer was locked all the way back, ready to fire, and you would have a half-cock notch. And this was very, very important on old-school revolvers like the Colt Single Action Army, because you didn't want to have the hammer resting on a percussion cap. That was not safe. If the revolver was jostled and something bumped into the hammer spur, then the gun could go off. So there was a half-cock notch where you would pull the hammer back just far enough for it to catch on that notch, not far enough such that if you pulled the trigger, it would be able to fire, but far enough back that it would not be resting on the percussion cap, or in more modern designs, have the firing pin resting on the primer. Now, why shouldn't you go off half-cocked? Because the gun won't fire reliably. There isn't enough potential energy stored mechanically in the hammer spring for the gun to be able to fire reliably, because there's a certain amount of energy that you need in order to detonate the primer or detonate the percussion cap, as the case may be. And so what you'll get is a click instead of a bang.
There you go. When uncocked, the hammer is resting on the firing pin, which is resting on the primer of the round in the chamber. If a sufficiently strong force is applied to the uncocked hammer, like say if it was dropped on the hammer, it'll transfer that energy into the primer and fire the round unintentionally. At half-cock, the hammer is resting on a notch that prevents it from contacting the fire pin. Exactly as you said, half-cock was a more common safety mechanism on really early single-shot weapons. Most modern striker-fired pistols completely avoid the issue by not having a hammer. That's exactly right. You got it. Nicely done. Okay, my friend. First off, before we go into our next segment, do you have what do you got as far as a blog? Do you have a blog going up tomorrow, or is there one from last week you want to talk about? Go for it.
My most recent blog post that went up was the first part in a series that's 3 parts. I'll have the next part going up tomorrow morning for you, tomorrow midday or afternoon for me, about it. Okay, this requires a little bit of introduction. You see people talking on other gun blogs and I guess to some extent on YouTube about the controversial subject of bullpup long guns.
Yeah.
And there is such a thing as a bullpup pistol, but I don't really cover that. And inevitably, whoever is writing or speaking will say, well, bullpups have weird ergonomic problems, and that's why they aren't more popular. Or bullpups have a weird control layout, and that's why they're not more popular. Or they aren't ambidextrous, and that's why they're not more popular, or so on and so forth. And I think that a lot of those arguments are not only wrong, but made in bad faith. So my blog posts, the most recent one and the next couple that are about to go up, are taken from the bullpup timeline, where if you can imagine a very close alternate reality in which bullpup rifles and shotguns became mainstream back in the 70s or 80s, and your conventionally laid out long guns, your ARs, AKs, FALs, whatever, kind of faded more into obscurity. And so what the argument would be the other way around, if bullpups were the default, what would people say to complain about conventional long guns? And yes, I'm kind of doing a bit with this, but it's to make a point that I think goes under-recognized.
That's interesting. So you're a fan of bullpup?
I am, yes. Actually,
I get
have one with me right now.
Oh, no! Don't show it on there. Don't show it. We'll get cut. Live
Okay.
YouTube will cut us if you have a gun.
Okay.
But appreciate it.
It didn't enter the frame. It's fine.
So if it's YouTube has these weird rules. If it's pre-recorded, you can show guns all day long. But because we're live, you can't show guns. So
Okay.
that's okay. I got to tell you, the Tavor is far more ergonomic than an AR. There, I said it. I said it.
Yeah, one of the things I point out, and each part of the post, because I didn't want it to end up being 2,000 words long or whatever.
Yeah.
People's legs would go numb from. I'm assuming people are sitting reading it on their toilets.
On the toilet, sure. Yeah, that's right.
I lost my light source. At the risk of making it sort of unnecessarily brief, I decided to cut it into 3 parts, and each part focuses on a different reason why in the bullpup timeline, bullpups are the default and conventional long guns are the exception rather than the rule. And in the second and third parts, I really focus on the ergonomic differences. And something I hear a lot is stuff about control placement and about balance. People complaining, oh, the controls are in a weird place and they're so rear heavy and it's just uncomfortable to hold a bullpup shotgun or rifle because the weight is all in the back. Well, that's not true, first of all. They tend to be center balanced. And second of all, that's just a training thing.
That's a training issue.
Like it. That isn't what you're used to.
If you took 100, let's say you took 100, fresh out of boot camp, Marines, and you gave 100 of them a bullpup, a Tavor, and you gave the other 100, an M4, and you followed them through their career. Let's say we were still in time of war. You think generally the guys with the Tavor, or at least some kind of bullpup option, would probably do better? Is that a too bold a claim, or is that what you're saying?
I think there would, at worst, there would not be enough of a difference to be noticeable, and at best there might be a slight improvement in speed. Talking about the Tavor specifically, the placement of the bolt catch is really, really great. Whereas on an AR-15, AR-10 type rifle, you have that ping pong paddle shaped bolt catch on the left side of the receiver, where you can actuate it with your support hand if you're right-handed, or with the trigger finger of your firing hand if you're wrong-handed. The Tavor has its bolt catch located right behind the magazine well, and it sticks out downward when the bolt is locked back. So it's actually faster to actuate, because as you're inserting the magazine, you can just stick your thumb out, push up, and as you're inserting the magazine into the mag well, the bolt will drop and chamber the first round. And that's the Tavor specifically. Other bullpup rifles have different control layouts, but none of the mainstream ones that you see out there today are really what I would consider bad in any way that I don't think. I don't think any of them are bad enough for there to be a really significant noticeable difference in your hypothetical scenario where you train 100 people on one gun and you train 100 people, your control group, on an M4 platform or on an AK or whatever. Though talking about the AK specifically, I think they would do a lot worse, because that rifle's control scheme was designed around basically the exact opposite of what is now considered the most correct way to handle a rifle.
Interesting. All right. Well, great. And that is if I remember correctly, part 1 went up last Monday and part 2 is coming up tomorrow, right?
Yeah, part 1's already up. Part 2 is coming up tomorrow.
And just go to sdcgo.org/blog or ocgunowners.com/blog or inlandempiregunowners.com/blog.
You know what I found with bullpups working with people?
What's that?
Like Sam was saying, people don't like necessarily weight distribution because it's not what they're expecting or what they might be used to. But that doesn't mean it's bad.
It doesn't mean
that
it's
means
bad,
when they have the time to sit there and hold it in their hands and they're at the counter, it's different. But I found that working with people when they have that weight centered differently or more compact versus distributed, they actually, if you think about it, when they got up on the shoulder and they're trying to hold it, it's easier to maintain and to hold, I found, for people in the bullpup version.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
To that point. Imagine, and I'm asking this of everyone who's listening also, imagine yourself standing in an offhand shooting position, so standing up, holding the rifle with your firing hand and your support hand, and you go to reload, talking about a box magazine fed rifle, though the case is similar for shotguns like the KSG, the TS-12, the M&P 12, but you're going to reload. With what hand are you supporting the rifle, and where is the center of mass of the rifle or shotgun relative to that hand? And the answers are respectively your firing hand and right above your firing hand.
Right. Yeah, I got to tell you, that KSG I love. Absolutely love the KSG. I've been through a couple of demonstrations with the DeVore and fell in love with a bullpup design, particularly with the DeVore. I think they're great. I think that most issues, there's so many issues. I don't know about most, probably most. So many issues that people complain about when it comes to shooting. So many things they don't like about this gun or that gun.
But they don't actually try them.
Can be trained through.
Right.
They're just training issues. Just spend time behind the trigger and you'll probably get it done. Okay, look forward to your blog. I want to read it. We'll talk more about it. Awesome job. Stick with us because we're going into our straight shooter segment. We've renamed this segment the straight shooter segment. Did I tell you that? Did you know that, Alicia?
I did not.
Yeah.
Learning that for the first time.
This is where we shoot you straight. Of course, the sponsor is Straight Shooter. Go to straightshooter.ac or call them at 619-922-3937. When's the last time you had your air conditioner or heater replaced? For a lot of people, it's probably been a decade or two or even longer. It's probably time. The last thing you want to do is wait for it to die. Get these guys to come out, take a look at it, replace your unit if need be, if it's been that long. They do have a shelf life, so if you haven't had yours replaced in a while, now's the time. Give them a call. Make sure you're staying cool or warm, and they'll help you out. They'll shoot you straight. Straight Shooter, again, straightshooter.ac, 619-922-3937. Call them today. So, yeah, no bull, just Straight Shooter on today's hottest gun topics, and it's time for our Straight Shooter segment. Okay, so the first one is an article from the LA Times. As we talked about at the beginning of the show, Trump regained 8 counties in California, which is pretty big. A lot of, and when I named off the counties, a lot of them are more rural counties, but some of them, Riverside, San Bernardino, are fairly big metropolitan areas. Anyway, so Newsom, who's basically running for president 4 years from now, Newsom promotes his economic plans in conservative parts of California. Governor Gavin Newsom headed to the Central Valley on Thursday to tout his forthcoming jobs plan, saying California's economic might was, quote, cold comfort to regions that feel like they don't fully participate in the state's muscular output. The substance of the governor's announcement was incremental, but the set piece, a liberal politician standing in front of heavy machinery, talking blue-collar jobs in a county that backed President-elect Donald Trump on November 5th, appeared to be a response to the election in which Democrats took a drumming after critics said they were out of touch on economic issues. Quote, some people talk about this economy is booming, inflation is cooling, lowest unemployment in our lifetimes. All that may be true, but people don't feel that way. They feel like the economy is not supportive, Newsom said in an appearance at a Fresno Community College, identifying that gap is a point of emphasis in the election. Newsom characterized the work in places like West Fresno's campus apprenticeship program as an antidote to the economic disconnect. This whole thing was such a as every the one of the more overused terms in today's society is gaslighting, right? Or is that what it is? Gaslighting?
Yeah.
Where you're the problem, but you're projecting onto somebody else saying, "Hey, you're the problem."
Yep.
Right? You're making somebody else feel guilty or feel responsible for something that you've done. This is the exact definition of that. He and his supporters, he being our illustrious governor, have completely screwed up this state economically. And now he's going to places that voted against his opinions. They voted for Trump and basically saying, hey, look, what we got to do here is we got to convince you, we got to show you, not we got to, hey, we have to improve your situation. We have to make sure that you are not paying so much for groceries and energy and shelter. He's not saying that. He's not coming out and saying, hey, we need to come out and help you. You need to improve your lot in life. He's basically saying, hey, look, you guys are wrong, and we just got to get you to convince yourselves that of the right stuff, which of course is what we've provided, and it's absolutely ludicrous. Sure, some of the things he's saying about a recovery are true, but he didn't recover them. He didn't do anything to spark that recovery, number one. And he's a big part of the problem that it isn't fully recovered, and he's also a big part of the reason that it needs recovering in the first place. So, and he does this with guns and every single subject. I mean, he really is the textbook definition of a sociopath. So, I don't know.
How old is he?
How old's Newsom?
Yeah.
I think he's in his 50s, mid-50s. Maybe a little. I don't think he's not 60 yet. It's getting a little grayer. I know that. Sam, did you get a chance to take a look at this article?
Yeah, and what comes to mind, other than, what comes to mind when looking at this kind of thing is, first of all, it's really interesting that it took such a big upset in the national elections a few weeks ago for Newsom and for others in his party to realize their messaging problems, which I think is just really funny. But second, it reminds me of a principle that I believe comes from economics, but it's very important in the world of public policy called Goodhart's Law. Have you heard of this?
No. Tell us what it is.
Goodhart's Law, in a nutshell, states that as soon as you rely on a single metric to gauge economic performance, that metric becomes useless to gauge economic performance. And the reason for that is that an economy or a government or an entire country, they're very complicated systems, and there's no one, you can't stick a thermometer in it to see how well it's doing. And so what I think the mistake that the Harris campaign and that I'm guessing other Democrats running for election made is when the subject of the economy came up, they were trying to run on the strength of the economy as measured in GDP per capita, because GDP per capita increased in the United States between 2020 and 2024. But GDP per capita is not the sole metric of economic performance, and it has very little relation to how most people are living their lives. It has very little relation to their lot in life. What really matters are things like price levels, inflation, average wages, things like that. And so it's really, I think, disrespectful to go around to working class people and to say, oh, well, your complaints are made up. The economy's doing fine. Look at this line. It's going up. The economy's fine. You're full of it. When they're really struggling. I remember reading a statistic that said something like, what was it, a third or 2/3 or something, some large percentage of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And Newsom and others expect us to believe that the economy's never been in better shape. It's patently ridiculous.
Yeah, don't believe your lying eyes. Everything's just fine. He it went on to say that he talked about the special session for the legislature he had to prepare for potential Republican or Trump-led attacks on abortion rights, environmental protections, and disaster funding. None of it had to do with the economy, by the way, if you really cared. None of the preparations were, let's prepare to shield ourselves from a successful Trump economy. It's so disingenuous for him to stand there, and he went on to talk about and actually said that Trump vandalized our progress the last time he was president. And said that he cares about Trump supporters, he cares about RFK Jr. supporters, he cares about Tucker Carlson supporters, he cares about Charlie Cook supporters and Ben Shapiro supporters. He cares about all people. None of this is true. It's unbelievable how quickly he can, he just turns on a dime and just stands right in front of people, blames it on them, blames it on the person they voted for. And in the same breath says he's there to support them. He's there to learn. And I think people are seeing what we've seen in the gun community out of Newsom, and how he treats people, and how he treats issues, and how he distorts things. Gun owners have seen him do that for years. We've been the victims of that for years. And now I think it's a lot broader. I think honestly, I really truly hope for the next 4 years he talks like this in front of a number of groups so that they can experience what gun owners have experienced from Newsom. I think the more he talks, the less popular he'll be.
You're not wrong.
That's my thought. Let's move on to Trump's new attorney general pick. This is kind of interesting. Her name is Pam Bondi, and let's see, the actual headline from the CNN article is Trump's AG pick, Pam Bondi, is more conventional than Gates, but the agenda to disrupt the Justice Department won't change. Now, Gates, I got to tell you, here's the thing. You're hearing a lot of criticism of Trump's picks right now from people who don't like Trump. They voted for Harris.
No surprise.
And if you look at, the Biden-Harris staff and their cabinet, for them to criticize anybody is absolutely ludicrous. And I got to tell you, they lost so heartily, they lost so severely. The leadership in Biden's cabinet, the leadership in Harris's staff when she was running for office, if you voted for Harris, with no due respect, shut up and sit down. You've completely shown yourself to have no ability to make any kinds of decisions, let alone criticize Trump for any kind of staff or leadership pick in any way. Shut up and sit down. And after you do that, shut up and sit down again for about the next 3.5 years. It's so unbelievably the things that this administration that you voted for picked, including the latest, where he's now authorized missiles, U.S. missiles, to be launched into Russia. Fantastic job, way to go. On your way out the door, let's go ahead and escalate what could quickly shape up into being a world war. Great job. But if you look at who they had in front as for Surgeon General, and they had in their cabinet, in their leadership staff, somebody that got busted for stealing women's clothes from the airport. It's just completely ridiculous for them to criticize cabinet picks of Trump. And again, I say sincerely, if you voted for Harris, shut up and sit down. Your time is done for now. Just sit there, let the adults talk for the next 3.5 years. That being said, if you voted for Trump and supported Trump like I did, I think that you're allowed to have some, bring up concerns about just about anything the guy does. And I was definitely concerned with Gates being the attorney general. That was a pretty odd pick, but he has left Congress and he's no longer in the running for Attorney General. Certainly didn't have the votes, which I'm actually very happy about. I'm happy with all his other picks, but Gates was pretty ugly. That was a pretty weird situation. That being said, he's moved on to Pam Bondi, who is the Attorney General for Florida, and I have some concerns there. But let me start with the article. With his new pick for Attorney General, President-elect Donald Trump has found not only a powerhouse media strategist and loyal ally, but a tenacious litigator known for her battles in court for conservative causes. And while little about Trump is conventional, Pam Bondi is a far more conventional selection to lead the U.S. Justice Department than Matt Gaetz, who stepped aside after a week of nonstop scrutiny. That's a real polite way of putting it, from Democrats and Republicans alike. Bondi's rise through the Florida state legal system and her fealty to Trump. Fealty? What's that word?
I was hoping you would know.
Hey, Sam, what's fealty mean? Fealty.
It means loyalty. It has a little bit of an archaic connotation, so you'll see it used in reference to the European feudal system.
Nice. So that her fealty to Trump.
I just looked it up.
What's it say?
Feudal tenants or vassals sworn loyalty to a lord.
Nice. I could not stump my nephew there. Anyway, the CNN article, surprisingly not bad. You know, it's fairly balanced. But I have some concerns. And we wanted to play just a bit of an interview with Pam Bondi, where she's actually sitting next to then President Trump, and she's talking about a subject that we talk about a lot. So go ahead, can you roll that for me?
Rewriting it along with Governor Scott, you're going to meet with him. He's going to give you a ton of good information. We've been rewriting it, and we are going to bring in something called the Gun Violence Restraining Order. So if someone is civilly committed, typically you can hold them for up to 72 hours, but people are getting out within 24 hours, the majority of them. So what we want to do is let law enforcement come in and take the guns.
Good.
They're a danger to themselves
Which you can't
or
do
others.
right now.
Well, because without being adjudicated. So because they're a danger to themselves.
You want them to take the guns and
when they are
not go through 6 months of legal trials and everything.
Exactly. But we also have to give the mentally ill the due process in which they deserve, President. So what we're doing is they're going to be able to take the guns when they're taken into custody or into the hospital, and then when they're released within 24 hours or 72 hours later, typically it's 24 hours, but law enforcement will have 72 hours to determine whether they should give those guns back, or they can go to a judge and say, Your Honor, please keep these guns. We feel this person is still a danger to himself or others, whether
So
they're
this
in or
would
out.
not-
Okay, so if your first reaction is red flag laws, she's horrible, that's the right reaction. You should. Red flag laws are horrible. Gun violence restraining orders are horrible. However, the reason I wanted to play that clip, if you really listened to what she described, it is not what gun violence restraining orders have turned into.
No.
And that is, it's a huge problem. You know, gun violence restraining orders have turned into an enormous problem. They were billed very similar to what she said. I mean, basically, she described what they were trying to create. What has ended up happening is they use gun violence restraining orders at the drop of a hat. They use it as standard operating procedure, and they've completely and totally ruined the concept that they were trying to create. Now, I didn't even really like the concept, but I was at least open-minded to it.
Right.
Like, let's sit down and talk about this. What are we trying to accomplish? What hole in the front line are we trying to fill? And I found out that there really isn't one. But on top of that, they've become so much worse because of people like our city council, our city attorney rather in San Diego, Mara Elliott, who just got termed out, and then one of her lackeys got voted in. So it's no better. But she has taken the voters' trust. We put a certain amount of trust. We say, hey, you know what? These gun violence restraining orders that you're talking about, let's move them forward. We trust you, you know, what you're describing, that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. So we give the government a certain amount of power with these gun violence restraining orders, and they've completely and totally abused it. So what I'm saying here is she needs to be thoroughly questioned on gun violence restraining orders. I don't think we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
How long ago was this interview?
Well, it was back when he was president.
Right.
So it was between 2016 and 2020. So I think it was somewhere around, I don't know exactly, but I think it was somewhere around 2017, 2018. It was clear to me really watching, like when you hear gun violence restraining orders, you go, wait a minute.
Right.
But when you really listen to what she was describing and realize just how far wrong it has gone, I'm not giving her a pass. Mm-hmm. She needs to be questioned. But what they attempted backfired extremely. So I'm very worried that if she still thinks that gun violence restraining orders are a good idea, then one of two things has happened. She hasn't been educated. She doesn't know. Or she's wrong, and I don't want her in the AG seat, and I'm real nervous about that. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? Sam, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the headline is correct in saying that she's a more conventional pick than Matt Gaetz in the capacity that she isn't a pederast, at least that we know of. So that's good, I guess. Yeah, totally agree with the GVRO red flag thing. And I'd like to clarify, if you don't mind, if you're listening to this and you aren't a very active person in looking at the news on 2A related causes, or even more interestingly, if you're a journalist listening to this trying to get a gotcha soundbite, hello. The reason we don't like gun violence restraining orders, red flag laws, is not because we think that dangerous people should have firearms. We don't. We absolutely don't want dangerous people to have firearms. But what the proposed solution, basically everywhere that it's been proposed, and many states have looked at, and many states have even passed these types of laws, amounts to the seizure of property from someone who not only has not been convicted of a crime, but has not been charged with a crime, let alone the fact that it necessarily infringes on a constitutionally protected right. But even ignoring the gun side of things, you've given the government the power to take people's stuff without any sort of due process, which is a very dangerous thing. Because, and I hate to make the slippery slope argument here, but giving the government, be it the state government, local governments, or the federal government, that authority to take your stuff, even if you haven't been charged with a crime or convicted of a crime, is a very, very dangerous thing to give up.
I agree. And I got to say, had they created gun violence restraining orders, and had they used them,
stuck to the spirit of the intent of what they were trying to do,
right? Had most of them been used on, grandpa who seems to be going senile and he's got a gun collection and they don't really know what to do, and something like that. Had they stuck to that, we wouldn't be in this situation,
right?
But they've mainstreamed them. They've completely and totally abused them. And so they've given us so many reasons to not like them.
And now SB2, California specific, has that extra layer of punishment involved.
Exactly. So it is an abuse. So when somebody says, "Gee, gosh, golly, you, Mr. Gun Owner or Mrs. Gun Owner, how come you don't like it when the government wants to, make some kind of law? This doesn't even affect whatever." This is why. Because if you give them an inch and they take, 100 miles, which is exactly what's happened with these gun violence restraining orders. That being said, okay, so they're horrible. But that being said, I'm not ready to completely trash Pam Bondi. And one of the reasons is, like, for example, Alan Gottlieb from Second Amendment Foundation, he put out a tweet where he quite literally says, "I vouch for her." There was an older interview. What she was describing is not what they ended up being. I'm very interested to hear how she answers to this, and I hope we get the right answer. So as a pick, what do you think, Sam? Do you think she's a good pick? Or, I mean, we all agree gun violence restraining orders are bad. But where do we stand on her being the next attorney general?
I don't think I'm ready to pass judgment yet. I of course have high hopes, trying to be optimistic, but I don't think I will necessarily say one way or the other. I think it's very interesting. I didn't know that Alan Gottlieb had actually vouched for her. That's a pretty big endorsement coming from
That is a big
side.
endorsement. I respect him very much, and that is a big endorsement. And sometimes it's tough. Like, who knows what tough conversations he's had with her, and he can't come out publicly and say, hey, look, we really got into it over gun violence restraining order. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's tough, but I definitely trust him. What do you think? What do you think about it? His pick is AG so far?
Well, I agree with Sam. I think it is kind of too early. However, I think it's a valid concern given the statements that she made. Now, if you notice, though, in that video, Trump is in total agreement with her. He was kind of going for it.
He was in agreement with what she described.
Right, exactly.
Which isn't what we have.
Right. And so I'd be curious to see, to hear an update as to how, first of all, how is it going in her state?
Yeah.
And how does she feel about it now?
Yeah, I agree. And
but it's a very valid concern.
I think I want to hear more. I think a lot of people, might be criticizing me right now. Like, hey, Mike, you totally slammed Hammerling because he was just as for gun violence restraining orders as Pam Bondi is. Well, I think there's a difference. We had him on the show. We questioned him. We talked to him. We had other people talk to him, and he remained supportive of exactly what gun violence restraining orders turned into,
right,
which I think is a very important point to make. I mean, we attempted, like, hey, where do you stand on these things? Were you just following orders? Do you think that they've fulfilled? Yeah, we asked him all the questions, and he gave all the wrong answers. So I'm willing to give Pam Bondi, the benefit of the doubt and at least the opportunity to see exactly what she thinks of gun violence restraining orders now. So,
I'd also like to point out real quick,
Sure.
while we're on the subject of red flag laws, that many of the high-profile circumstances which are held up as reasons for passing a red flag law, like if we just had a red flag law in place, thus and such would not have happened. In many of those cases, there were actionable threats beforehand. Even if you live in a state in which there are no red flag laws, if someone is behaving in a legitimately threatening way and they have access to firearms, you do have things you can do about that legally.
Yeah. And that was one we actually wrote a response to Mara Elliott. She wrote an op-ed for Huffington Post, and she gave, I forget, maybe half a dozen examples of why they used red flag laws or how they used red flag laws in real life. These are actual cases where they left the names out. And we went back and showed that there were multiple, every single one of them, there were multiple penal codes that they had broken, could have been taken into custody, and firearms could have been taken away from them. But there was no need for a gun violence restraining order. She really gave no examples for an actual need of a gun violence restraining order to make somebody, to relieve somebody of guns. Like right now, if you go get into a fight with your neighbor or something like that, or domestic violence, or I don't know, some kind of, you're going to be separated from your guns. That's been happening for decades. We actually interviewed a number of law enforcement officers, and they said, nope, we never have a problem separating someone who's committed a crime from their firearm. So there's really just no need for what they're doing. There's no need for these gun violence restraining orders. Let's talk about one thing. This comes from The Hill. Let's talk about one more thing, which is good news. Gun ownership. This is, more Republican women buying guns, according to Gallup. Gun ownership among Republican women has grown in recent years, a new survey found. According to Gallup's annual measurement of gun ownership across the country, the percentage of Republican women who own a gun has increased from 19% in 2007 to 2012 to 33% in 2019 to 2024. Meanwhile, the rate has dropped among Democratic men and independent men in that period. The rate has fallen 7 percentage points among Democratic men to 29%. It fell 5 percentage points from 39% among independent men. Republican men remain the most likely group across the country among gender and party identification to own guns, with 60% saying they own one, Gallup found. Among independent women, the rate grew by 2%, and among Democratic women, it fell by 1%. Gallup noted it combined data beginning in 2007 and first reported on its findings in 2013. Trends remain the same as then, according to its analysis, which observed that, quote, gun ownership rates continued to diverge sharply by gender, even as more women purchase guns, end quote. While more women are buying guns now than before, the gap between political parties has expanded. The survey noted this is likely due to partisan ties to guns as they become a more political issue at home and on the campaign trail. I got to tell you, I think this is, well, let me keep going, actually. Just a couple other interesting points. About 50% of respondents who say they live in rural areas own a gun in the most recent survey, compared to 20% of urban. So if you're in a rural area, 50% own a gun. If you're in an urban area, only 1 in 5 or 20% own a gun. Overall, Gallup noted 31% of U.S. adults say they personally own a gun, and 13% say there's a gun in the household that belongs to somebody else. So one of the reasons we started our shooting socials, where we teach people, give them a first-time shooting experience, is when I started San Diego County Gun Owners, and I started walking around old San Diego and saying, hey, let's vote based on guns. I ran into so many adults who'd never shot before.
Right.
And I think we need to look at this as an opportunity. We need to look at this and say, hey, if independents and Democrats, if their numbers are falling, we need to improve that. But I thought it was interesting that I think it's also evidence that the chasm between the left and the right has gotten bigger in the past 15 years. Which I believe is unfortunate.
I noticed a big increase, the 2 different marketed events since I've been kind of in this world. One is the whole Me Too movement, which I know spurred the Not Me,
sure.
Right? I saw a huge uptick in women purchasing firearms, and many of them at that time were a lot of Democratic women. And then the riots that we had here.
BLM, yeah.
Yep. All of that that didn't seem to be gender related, at least not that I noticed. But that was just a huge, massive influx of people that have never owned a gun before. They all of a sudden realized, police can't be everywhere I need them to be. I got to take care of myself. And so there was just a massive increase in ownership that I saw. At least that came into me getting instruction because they never touched a gun before.
Yeah, I think the temptation is to go, those darn anti-gunners, bah.
Right.
But if you're truly passionate about the Second Amendment, if you really consider yourself an activist, if you want to do a little bit more than you did last year to help us be even more successful, this is not a problem. It's an opportunity.
Right.
To find more Democrats, to find more, of everybody, basically, and say, hey, we need you to, look at how. And I think what's important is we got to figure out what their hot button is.
I think for a lot of them, it's fear of the unknown. They don't know. Invite them to a shooting social. Let them feel it and try it.
Yeah, in both those situations that you described, it wasn't a sport.
Nope.
It wasn't, something. It wasn't a new hobby. It wasn't they were looking for something fun to do.
It was fear.
It was fear. They were worried about their personal safety in one way or another.
Right.
And I think we have to lean into that.
Yep.
I don't know. Sam, what do you think, man? Did you read this article?
Yes. I was a little bit surprised by the results, but really not surprised to hear that that gap had grown. And I absolutely agree that a lot of what is keeping people who have never seen in person, touched, smelled a gun before from getting into shooting is because they think it's scary because they don't know anything about it.
Right.
And that's part of why outreach is so important.
There you go.
I worked with a lot of people where they booked the lesson or they felt forced or pressured to do it. And they came in with it with the expectation of they're going to hate it and they can't go back to their family or their friends and say that how evil and horrible guns are until they've experienced it. And they come and they actually change their mind.
Yeah.
But, they come in thinking that the lesson, that the private instruction time is just going to be able to allow them to validate and solidify their opinion that they hate guns and guns are bad. And they leave with the opposite.
There you go. All right, guys, check out gunownersradio.com. If you're not subscribed to our email list, then please subscribe to our email list. If you're not a member of San Diego County Gun Owners or Orange County Gun Owners or Inland Empire Gun Owners, the prices have dropped for membership, so check it out and join today. Just go to the website, sdcgo.org, and join, or go to ocgunowners.com, or go to inlandempiregunowners.com and join today. If you're already a member, make sure that you're a current member, or just make a donation. I got to tell you, it's the most effective money you're going to donate to in the political world. We've all done amazing things and continue to do amazing things. Thank you so much, Alicia.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Matt, on the board over there. And, of course, producer Rich, thank you. And thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you, Seal One. Thank you, Straight Shooter. Thank you, John Dillon. And, of course, Red, White, and Badass Brew. And Cargo. If you haven't checked out Cargo, check out Cargo. We will see you all next Sunday. Have a very happy Thanksgiving. Eat a turkey leg for me. Be safe, and do a little bit more next year than you did this year, and help us, because together we will win. Gun Owners Radio.